What kind of father looks at his own daughters and sees disappointment? Marcus Johnson did. In the heart of Brooklyn, he had three beautiful girls, bright eyes, eager smiles, and yet every time they reached for him, he turned away. To Marcus, daughters weren't a legacy. They were failures. He wanted a son, a name to carry, a crown to pass. And when his wife couldn't give him that, he shattered their home with 4 words that would scar them all. You gave me nothing. This is the story of pride turned poison, love turned cold, and a man who would walk away from the very family destined to save him. What Marcus didn't know was that fate never forgets. And when it came for him, it would come through the same daughters he abandoned. Asterisk. Marcus Johnson never hit it well. Every time he looked at his daughters, his face tightened, not in love, but in quiet resentment. He gave them food, he gave them shelter, but his eyes told the truth. They were not what he wanted. To him, Danielle, Maya, and Imani weren't blessings. They were failures, living reminders that his bloodline would end without a son. And though the girls tried, drawing him pictures, racing to hug him when he came home, Marcus would brush past them, the bitterness in his chest louder than their laughter. Their mother, Renee, saw it all. She watched the man she once loved slip into silence at family dinners, his fork scratching the plate, his gaze cold as stone. She caught the sighs he released when the girls came running to show him their schoolwork. She heard the way he muttered under his breath, 3 daughters and not 1 boy. At first, she tried to fight it. She reminded him of their vows, of the joy they once had, of the family they had built together. But Marcus's heart had already hardened. Each passing year only sharpened his disappointment. Then came the breaking point. One evening, the girls sat in the living room, giggling over cartoons. Renee was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of collard greens. Marcus sat at the table, staring at the steam, his jaw tight. Finally, he snapped. "Renee," he said, his voice low but shaking with anger. She turned, wiping her hands on a towel. "What is it, Marcus?" He slammed his fist on the table, making the girls jump. "I'm tired of this. Tired of walking into this house, full of noise, and not 1 son to carry my name. Not 1. The girls froze, eyes wide. Renee stepped closer, her voice trembling. "They're your children. They love you. How can you talk like that?" His eyes burned. "You don't understand. A man without a son is nothing. I got 3 daughters, Renee. 3. And none of them will ever carry my name forward. You couldn't give me what I needed." The words cut like glass. Danielle, only 12, dropped the crayon she was holding. Maya's lips quivered. Little Imani buried her face in Renee's skirt. In one sentence, Marcus had shattered them all. Renee swallowed her tears, standing between her daughters and the man she once believed was her forever. "So that's what we are to you. Failures." But Marcus didn't answer. His silence was answer enough. From that night on, the house no longer felt like home. Dinner conversations died. Smiles disappeared. The man who once played with his daughters in the park now left the apartment early and came back late. Resentment had turned into distance, and distance into a wall. And then he left. Marcus filed for divorce before the year was over. He packed his clothes into a suitcase and walked out, leaving Renee standing in the doorway with 3 crying girls clinging to her legs. He didn't look back. Not once. The neighborhood whispered. Some said Marcus was cruel. Others said Renee should have prayed harder for his son. But inside that brownstone, gossip didn't matter. What mattered were 3 girls staring at an empty chair at the dinner table, wondering why their father's love had conditions. Renee worked herself raw to fill the gap. Mornings at the diner, nights cleaning offices. She came home exhausted, but still found the strength to braid her daughter's hair, check their homework, and whisper before bed, "You are enough. You will always be enough." But Marcus thought he had finally escaped. He moved to the Bronx with a younger woman who promised him the one thing Renee couldn't. And when she bore him 2 sons, Marcus puffed his chest with pride. He finally had what he wanted, heirs to his name. Yet even then, something felt hollow. His new family didn't laugh the way Renee's did. His sons didn't run to the door with crayons and smiles. His new wife didn't look at him with the same devotion Renee once had. But Marcus ignored the emptiness. He drowned it with work, with pride, with the belief that he had one. Meanwhile, Renee's daughters bloomed. Danielle buried herself in books, whispering dreams of becoming a doctor. Maya grew fierce, speaking up for neighbors and classmates, a voice for the unheard. Imani danced in the schoolyard, her joy unshaken by the weight of abandonment. They were growing into women of strength, even as the shadow of their father's rejection followed them. Years rolled by. Marcus's construction business began to crumble. Jobs dried up, bills piled high. Pride turned into debt notices and sleepless nights. His sons grew older, distracted, distant. His second marriage cracked under the weight of disappointment. And still, Marcus never once reached out to the daughters he had left behind. But fate is cruel, and sometimes it delivers justice in ways no man can predict. For Marcus Johnson, the reckoning was coming. His body would fail him. His pride would strip him bare. And the same daughters he once called worthless would soon hold his very life in their hands. This was the fall of Marcus Johnson, a man who mistook pride for power, a man who chose legacy over love, a man who would learn too late that the very children he rejected were the ones destined to save him. Marcus Johnson believed he had found redemption in the Bronx. A younger wife, 2 sons. Finally, the heirs he had longed for. He stood in his new apartment, staring proudly at their bassinets, whispering to himself, "Now, my name will live on." But names don't raise children. Pride doesn't build families. And as the years unfolded, Marcus's second chance at happiness turned into a slow unraveling. His new wife grew tired of his long hours and empty wallet. The construction business that once kept food on his table began to collapse with the city's changing tides. And though his sons carried his last name, they did not carry the devotion he had once cast aside. They were distracted, restless, indifferent. To them, Marcus was just another man struggling to pay bills in a city that swallowed pride whole. Meanwhile, across the bridge in Brooklyn, Renee was fighting a different battle. She woke before sunrise, slipping out quietly so her daughters could keep sleeping. Mornings at the diner left her smelling of coffee and grease. Nights cleaning downtown offices left her back aching. But she never once let her children feel the weight of her exhaustion. When Danielle stayed up late studying, Renee sat beside her, head nodding but determined to keep her company. When Maya organized block cleanups, Renee stood proudly, handing out water bottles to volunteers. And when little Imani danced in the living room, Renee clapped like it was Madison Square Garden. Yes, the money was tight. Yes, the pain of betrayal still burned. But in that small brownstone, there was love. Fierce, protective, undeniable love. And it was that love that began to shape the girls into women Marcus could never have imagined. Danielle, the eldest, carried the scars of her father's rejection in silence. She buried herself in textbooks, convinced that excellence would be her revenge. She whispered to herself at night, "One day, I'll prove him wrong. One day, I'll be more than enough." Maya, bold and fiery, turned her pain into purpose. She became the voice of her school, the protector of her community, the girl who would not let anyone feel small. Were Johnsons too. She would snap when kids teased them for not having father around, and were stronger than any son. Imani, the youngest, carried a joy her father could not erase. She danced through life, choosing not to let bitterness consume her. She believed in light even when the world felt dark. Together, they became Renee's pride, her proof that daughters could be legacies, her proof that love was enough. But Marcus never saw it. He was too busy drowning in the life he thought he wanted. The construction contracts dried up. Friends disappeared when the money stopped flowing. Nights at the bar turned into mornings of regret. And his second marriage, once built on promises of sons and success, cracked under the weight of disappointment. His wife grew bitter, his sons grew distant. And Marcus, once proud, now found himself alone in a Bronx apartment that felt more like a prison than a home. Still, his pride wouldn't let him call Renee, wouldn't let him check on the daughters he had abandoned. He told himself they were fine. He told himself he didn't care. But late at night, when the silence pressed too heavy, he thought of Danielle's smile, Maya's laugh, Imani's tiny hands reaching for him. Memories he tried to bury clawed their way back. But while Marcus drowned in regret, he refused to admit Renee's life was shifting. For the first time in years, she let someone in. Charles, a jazz musician who lived 3 blocks away, noticed the weight she carried. He saw the way she walked home with tired shoulders but still held her daughter's hands. He offered her laughter, companionship, and a softness she hadn't felt since before Marcus turned cold. At first, Renee resisted. Her heart was scarred, her trust worn thin. But Charles was patient. He took her daughters to concerts in the park. He fixed broken chairs in the brownstone. He stood in the crowd at Danielle's science fair, clapping louder than anyone else. Slowly, Renee let her guard down. Slowly, she remembered that she deserved love too. The girls encouraged her. "Mom, you've carried us long enough," Maya said one evening. "It's time somebody carries you." And though Renee's romance with Charles remained gentle, careful, it marked a turning point. The past no longer defined her. She was building something new. But Marcus? Marcus was unraveling faster than he could hide. By his 50s, the weight of his choices pressed hard. The Bronx apartment shrank around him. His phone stopped ringing. His sons, now older, cared more for the streets than for him. And his health began to falter. Shortness of breath, chest pains, signs he ignored until they grew too loud. Still, he refused to face his truth. He convinced himself he had lived right, that sons had made him whole, that daughters were never meant to carry his name. But life was moving forward without him. Danielle graduated at the top of her class. Maya earned scholarships for her community work. Imani performed in showcases, her dance catching the attention of recruiters. They were thriving, rising, proving every word he once said wrong. And still, Marcus remained silent, too proud to call, too ashamed to face them. But pride is a fragile mask. It can't cover the cracks forever. And Marcus's cracks were growing wider, his body weaker, his spirit emptier. The man who once believed he was nothing without sons was about to learn the cruelest lesson of all. The very children he discarded were the only ones who could save him. The lost years were coming to a close, and the reckoning was about to begin. Marcus Johnson woke to a second sunrise he did not deserve. The monitors blinked. The floor dripped. Pain throbbed behind his ribs like a stubborn drum. He breathed in air that did not belong to a man who'd spent decades shoving love out of his house and calling it legacy. Day 1 after surgery, he asked for Danielle. She didn't come. Day 2, he asked again. She sent a nurse. Day 3, a social worker brought a clipboard and a mirror. "Rehab plan," she said, "and accountability." Marcus nodded, staring at the pale stranger in the glass. He had his father's jaw. He also had his father's damage. On day 4, the door opened, and the past walked in on 6 feet. Renee, Danielle, Maya, Imani. They moved as one, a tide he couldn't outrun. No flowers, no smiles, no open arms. Only a hard, heavy silence that told the truth. He was alive, but not restored. "Thank you for coming," Marcus whispered. Renee's face didn't move. "We came to hear you say it. All of it. Without excuses." He tried to swallow. His throat fought him. "I was wrong." Danielle's eyes didn't blink. "Be specific." He looked at each of them like stepping stones across deep water. "I was wrong to measure you by a name instead of a heartbeat. I was wrong to call you less because you were daughters. I was wrong to walk away from our home, our vows, our girls. I was wrong to let pride speak for me. And I was wrong to stay gone." Silence swelled, then cracked. Maya stepped forward first, voice steady as a judge. "Apologies are cheap. What do you plan to do that costs you?" He exhaled, shaky. "I'll do the work. Therapy. Restitution. I'll show up where I failed to show up. If I have to crawl to earn your respect, I'll crawl." Imani tilted her head. "And what if we don't want you back?" He nodded, eyes wet. "Then I'll still do the work. Because you deserved a father even if I never get to be him." Renee finally spoke, and when she did, the room listened. "We're not here to patch the hole you made. We're here to see if you can live with it without making new ones." He held her gaze. The woman he broke. The woman who raises miracles. I can try. Danielle's jaw loosened. The slightest fraction. Try is cheap too. You'll meet Dr. Alvarez every Thursday. Trauma therapy. You'll attend recovery group Mondays. You'll volunteer at the clinic on weekends. Janitorial work, not speeches. And you'll set up a fund, anonymous, for girls in STEM at our old high school. You will not sign it with your name. Marcus nodded, tears steady now. Done. Not done, Maya said. Started. There's a difference. They left him like that. Washed out, raw, breathing. His life no longer is to narrate, but is to repair, brick by slow brick. Rehab was ugly. He shuffled down fluorescent hallways, chest stitched, pride stripped. He learned how to climb stairs without lying to himself. He learned how to breathe without pretending he was invincible. He sat in therapy and said words he'd never said aloud. I hated being small, so I made everyone else smaller. He scrubbed clinic floors on Saturdays, mopped up fear and coffee, cleaned the same hallway where his daughter once walked to save his life. He didn't tell anyone who he was. He learned how to be nobody, and in that anonymity, learned how to become someone new. Renee kept her distance. She had a life now, a rhythm that did not bend to Marcus's recovery. Charles brought her flowers that weren't apologies, sunflowers that looked like daylight on purpose. He tuned her old record player, coaxed Billie Holiday from dusty grooves, cooked on Sundays, and left by 10. Love without pressure, presence without debt. One evening, after work, Renee stood outside the brownstone and found Marcus across the street, cap low, hands in pockets, not crossing, not calling, just looking at the place where he used to pretend love was owed to him. She walked over. Staring won't rebuild it. I know, he said. I'm learning to ask what help looks like instead of building altars to my name. Renee studied him, softer around the eyes, slower in the mouth. A man finally listening to the echo of his own silence. Help looks like you're not rushing this. Help looks like you're showing up for the girls without asking for parades. He nodded. Then I'll be boring and on time. They shared a quiet that didn't demand an ending, only a boundary. With the daughters, redemption came measured. Teaspoons, not rivers. Danielle met him in bright hospital cafeterias for 10-minute coffees. All business at first. Blood pressure logs. Medication adherence. Then, tiny cracks. My resident botched a central line, she said once, rolling her eyes. He laughed, careful. I botched 3 marriages worth of central lines, he replied. She didn't smile, but she didn't walk away. Maya set tests. Community forum. Friday night. Folding chairs at 6. Don't talk. Stack. He stacked. Food pantry. 7 a.m. You lift, I count. He lifted. When an auntie called him son, he nodded and kept moving. When a man cracked a joke about sons and names, Marcus didn't flinch. Legacy is who cries when you're gone, he said, then went back to loading boxes. Imani was last to thaw. Come to my show if you want. No promises. He came early, sat in the back, clutched the program like a life raft, and cried quietly when her body told the truth music could not. He left before the applause ended. The next day, a bouquet showed up at the theater. No name. She knew anyway. Months stacked. Therapy deepened. The fund at the high school paid for lab coats, graphing calculators, field trips to Columbia and NYU. Girls who had never ridden the subway out of their neighborhood rode toward futures that didn't ask them to apologize for brilliance. No plaque, no ribbon cutting, just the quiet arithmetic of repair. And the romances, because love doesn't sit still when people do the work. Renee allowed Charles to stay past 10. They learned each other's breathing. Grief and joy shared a kitchen without competing. On a June evening, the girls, women now, hosted dinner. Charles washed dishes with Marcus in an armistice of soap and steam. Thank you for loving them when I wouldn't, Marcus said. It wasn't a favor, Charles answered. It was an honor. Don't waste it. Danielle stood at a different threshold. Andre, steadfast, wounded by the way her father's return reopened rooms she'd boarded shut. Watch her choose courage over control. You saved a man who didn't save you, he said one night. What do you need from me? Patience, she said, and a future that doesn't treat my past like an unpaid bill. He proposed in a park where Renee once pushed 3 strollers through weather and judgment. Danielle said yes with a laugh that sounded like release. At the wedding, she chose to walk herself down the aisle. Halfway, she stopped, turned, and nodded at Marcus. Not an invitation, a recognition. He stayed seated, hand on his chest, weeping in gratitude for a grace that didn't center him. After the vows, he stood at the edge of the dance floor, invisible by choice. Renee came to stand beside him. She looks like you when she decides, she said. God help her. He smiled through tears. God helped her, Renee answered. She helped herself. Later that summer, a block party closed their old street. Fire hydrant open, kids squealing through silver arcs of water. A grill hissed. Dominoes slammed. A DJ resurrected the 90s and made them feel lighter than they were. Marcus arrived with folding chairs and left with nothing but emptier hands and a fuller heart. Toward dusk, he found himself alone beside the brownstone stoop. The girls approached. Not girls anymore, but the legacy he had once refused to see. Danielle spoke first. We're not erasing what happened. I know, he said. Maya crossed her arms, then let them fall. We'll hold you to your Thursdays and your Mondays. I'm already late if I don't leave now, he answered. Imani took a breath. You can come to Sunday dinners. Sometimes. Bring paper towels, not speeches. He laughed, then sobered. Paper towels I can do. Renee stepped from the doorway, arms folded, the evening painting her in gold. Forgiveness is not a door. It's a hallway, she said. We'll see how far you walk. I'll walk till the lights go out, he promised. And he did. Not perfectly, not theatrically, just stubbornly, week after week, choosing the quiet work over the loud shortcut. He learned birthdays he'd missed and showed up for the ones he wouldn't. He sat in back rows and left before applause could pretend to be absolution. He became a man whose name didn't need announcing to be known. Years later, on a plain afternoon that felt ordinary enough to be holy, Marcus sat on a Brooklyn stoop with a grandchild asleep on his chest. Across the street, a girl in a lab coat crossed with a backpack and a dream paid for by an anonymous fund. Down the block, Maya organized volunteers with a whistle. In the window above, Imani stretched, a silhouette of grace. Inside the kitchen, Renee laughed at something Charles said, a sound that moved like home. Voice over the image that once would have shamed him and now saved him. Legacy isn't sons. Legacy is love that keeps breathing after your pride stops. Redemption isn't a speech. It's a schedule you keep. And family is an ode. It's offered again and again until you're steady enough to hold it without breaking it. Marcus closed his eyes and finally understood. He hadn't been spared to reclaim his throne. He'd been spared to carry chairs. You don't get to rewrite the first chapters, but you can choose a